Songwriters is how do I connect with a music publisher, and how do I get a deal? What do I do? So that's why we're doing this today. We're going to find out about you a little bit in a minute with a couple of polls. The chat is working. If you have questions, you can put them in the little Q&A question mark at the bottom of the screen anytime. But we're going to answer those towards the end. This is being recorded. You will get an email within 24 hours indicating where the recording is. One thing that's very important with any information gathering that you do, whether it's a webinar, a seminar, trade show, conference, is that you put together a plan of action afterwards. All of us, I've gone to different events where you stuff all this shit into your head, but unless you actually do something with it, it doesn't do you much good. So out of all of this, try and write down 4 or 5 things that you're going to do differently starting tomorrow, and then that'll have some value. And that's the same thing if you go to Departure or North by Northeast or any of these other events, read a book, research on the internet. The important thing is an action plan. So the polls, let me find that. It is. Okay, so first thing we want to know is where you're from. And I've just divided this into Western Canada, Ontario, Eastern Canada, USA, and foreign. So you could just answer those. With this one, it's one choice because you can't live more than one place, but we do have a fair number from the States. Okay, so there's the results. You can see mostly Ontario, but quite a few from out west and Eastern Canada, which for the purpose of this is Quebec and the Maritimes. Okay, so just a breakdown of what you do. Now these are multiple choice because a lot of people in the industry do a lot of different things. So you can be a songwriter, a musician, you can be a music publisher, and a lot of people are a lot of these things. Okay, so there's quite a few that aren't songwriters, so I have to assume that those people want to be songwriters, and that's why they're here. And in my mind, every musician should be, let me just publish that, should be a songwriter. Okay, but still mostly songwriters, a lot of musicians, some publishers, educators. Okay, so that gives a good idea of who's here. So we're really lucky today. Between Michael and Melissa, we have a wealth of knowledge and experience. Michael especially goes way back. Known him for almost forever, or it seems that long anyway. And if you read their bios on the on either the Kilometre website or in the landing page for this, you'll see incredible experience. So we're really lucky to have them here today to answer a lot of the questions. So I'm going to just get rid of the PowerPoint for a sec here. There we go. Gone. Okay, so now it's just the 3 of us here. So I'm going to start off with long before you decide to find a publisher, you basically have to get your shit together, I think is what it's all about. So that's the first thing I want Michael and Melissa to deal with, is just how a songwriter or would-be songwriter develops their skills and gets a package together. And either one of you can answer that.
Go ahead.
Well, first of all, thanks for having us, Jim. I'd love to see the curriculum at a school where one of the courses was how to get your shit together. But anyway, that's a really good starting point. You know, in my entire experience of my career, dealing with people who are sort of entry-level songwriters or people who want to be songwriters. Um, the most common, well, let me answer that question this way. There's a world famous historic comedian, and depending on what generation he's from, you may or may not know him, named Steve Martin. And he's like a historically great comedian. He's got a TV show now called Only Murders in the Building. But one of the things that he's famous for was he was the first comedian that ever could play stadiums and arenas. And so historically great guy. And he has a masterclass. So if you go to that website, Masterclass, you can see lots of famous, successful people giving master classes. You can subscribe to it. And he has one for comedy. And if you go to YouTube and look at the trailer on YouTube for this course, it starts out with him in front of the camera. He says a couple of funny things, and then he gets serious. He says, when I first meet the students, the most common questions I get are, how do I get a headshot, or how do I get an agent? And I say to them, shouldn't your first question be, how do you be great? So it's only human nature to think that you're writing songs, you're making music, and you're excited about it, and you think it's great. By definition, based on the statistics of how these things work, it's probably shit. And even if you're destined to be a great songwriter, the first few things you write, the first little while, phase of your career as you're building your craft is probably crap. To me, the secret to getting a publishing deal, the secret to succeeding as a songwriter, 3 magic secret points. Number 1, write insanely great songs. Number 2, write insanely great songs. And I guess you could probably guess what number 3 is. See number 1. Getting the craft to the point where you can start getting industry attention is the hardest thing, and it's the number 1 thing you have to do, and you have to do it and do it and do it. And if you think about it, you're competing with all your favorite artists and songwriters. You're competing with the best in the world, and there's millions of you doing this. And it's not unlike some other vocation. If you wanted to be a great athlete, what would you do? If you wanted to be a doctor, what would you do? Well, you have to put a shitload of work in, right? And it's the same thing. There's a craft to this. It's an art and a science. And the science part is the craft part, and you have to put a lot of time and effort into the craft. Some people are born blessed with being able to craft great songs right out of their first time they start writing. They're very few and far between. It takes a lot of hard work, and I would suggest Google's your friend for everything. I'd suggest you study song structures. How are songs structured? What's terminology? Hooks, bridges, verses, etc. AABA, all the sort of science and craft of the craft, and start from there, and try and find people who are objective, not your family, and not your best friends, and not your spouses. Try and find people who are objective, and see if they think what you're doing is good.
Excellent. Melissa, you must in the average day hear a lot of really bad songs.
Not from our writers. I mean, yeah, for sure. But I think the key is to always find the good in something and try and work on it, right? There's some people who work on their songs for a long time, just keep editing, right? Not that that's always a good thing to do, because you got to finish it at some point. But yeah, for sure. Everyone writes a bad song, even if you're a great writer. At some point, you have an off day.
It's mostly, if you have it, this is a funny thing. The amount of talent it takes to be a world-class songwriter is obviously, there has to be, quite a bit of talent. But it's not necessarily the most important thing. It's kind of like athletics as well. There's a lot of athletic analogies, when I'm talking about this stuff. But for instance, many people grow up. You've got people in your high school that are incredible athletes, and you really admire them, and you think, well, that person's going to go all the way. And and the various sports are full of these feeder systems where you start out playing some sport when you're young, and they have a structure and a feeder system. And next thing you know, there's a stream that feeds to the pros. The music doesn't have that, unfortunately, right? And it'd be probably better if it did. What they're doing most of the time is they're spending most of their time working on their craft. And my point's going to be this: is that once you have enough talent to write a song where there's a great section. Somebody goes, wow, I love that chorus, or well, that's really memorable, or gee, what a great lyric. Then you have the talent, in my mind, to write a great song. But what you have to do is understand that every moment has to be great. Go rewatch your favorite successful movie. And when I'm referring to other media or popular culture, I mean things that have been successful, not underground niche things. Go rewatch your favorite successful movie and try and find a moment in the hour and a half where it doesn't matter. So your 3-minute song has to be the same. And if we had a whiteboard here, I would show you like this is the way I listen to songs. Literally, sometimes I actually do this on a piece of paper on the whiteboard. There's a graph, a vertical axis, horizontal axis, and in the middle of that graph is a dotted line with sort of, Mike McCarty's arbitrary idea of the quality line. Above it's great, below it's shit. And then as I'm listening to the song, I follow along and I have and I mark out what I call the hot spots, which can be a hook, something memorable, something engaging. It's like the engaginess of it, if that's not even a word. And so as the song's going along, the line is above the dotted line. Now it's below. Now it's above. Now it's below. Now it's above. And what I say to people is, did you write all those spots above the line? Well, yeah. Then I say, why can't you make them all above the line? The answer is you either don't know it's not above the line, so you have to get objective or surround yourself with people who are objective, or B, you haven't worked at it enough because you got the talent.
Excellent. So let's assume for a moment that the people in the audience can write a song, and it's not below the line. Networking, making connections is a good step. And I just wanted to talk about that a little bit because a lot of times, co-writing and collaborating is a good thing, but also making connections in the industry with publishers, other songwriters, record companies, managers, etc. What's the best way for the attendees to do that kind of thing?
I think, there's, if you live in the bigger cities, there's always going to be networking events and things like that to go to, which I think is good to show face at those things, especially when you're starting out. Just those are the opportunities to meet people when you go to the panels and stuff like that. You get a couple of minutes sometimes to introduce yourself after, and then it's like really just like bumping into people on the regular, right? When somebody is really going to stick and remember who you are. In terms of networking, I think networking with your peers is more important first. So like your fellow creatives, networking through like DMing people on Instagram. That's really how people connect these days. And like how a lot of major producers are getting placements is going like creative to creative that are connecting that way, and that's how they start the initial conversation. I think when you're having conversations with industry people, like if you don't already know them and doing the cold call thing is tough, a good way to get in and meet industry people for the first time is co-writing with somebody who's already published, because then you're actually going to pretty much guarantee that a publisher will hear that song if you've co-written it with somebody that's signed to them. That's kind of a suggestion that I have for a lot of people, just very much like on the other side of things, like when you're booking a live show, trying to open up for somebody who has an agent and then invite the agent out to the show earlier to check your set if they happen to be coming to the show, things like that, right? Like, I think it's really important to understand that everybody in the industry is like super busy and they get bombarded with tons of emails and tons of music. And that goes for like music supervisors who are trying to sync music and stuff like that too. So it is tough to like do cold reach outs to people if you're not already having a conversation with them. But just knowing the right way to do it is very important.
Excellent. I think one online platform that's good for networking is LinkedIn, not only for other songwriters, but to reach publishers and all the people in the business. And it's pretty straightforward. You can find different people and make connections there. Just before we get into trying to get your music published, let's talk about the different sources of income that a songwriter can enjoy if you guys could maybe just list 4 or 5 of those, because a lot of times songwriters might know 1 or 2, but they don't know all the different. But potentially, if you're really good at this and successful, you can see a lot of payments. So maybe you could just talk about that for a minute.
Sure. I mean, nowadays the predominant source of revenue is streaming. Of course, it's about 65% of the revenue from in the industry. So streaming, there's 2 basic rights in the song. Trying to simplify the idea of copyright. There's the reproduction right, which is the right to have your song reproduced or not reproduced. We'll get to that in a second. The other is the public performance right, which is the right to have your song performed in public. Historically, that started before there was technology, so literally it was the right to allow somebody to perform it in a concert or whatever, and that's since then been stretched to also mean your music recording is performed in public, i.e. Played on the radio, played in streaming. So streaming, radio, concerts, about in Canada, 3% of the box office take in a concert goes to the songwriters and publishers. In some countries in Europe, it's up to 10%. In the US, it's pathetic. It's a fraction of all that, but it's still you earn money from concerts. Placements in TV shows, movies, that's called synchronization, or syncs for short. These days, most of the social media platforms are also pay royalties. So Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok. Peloton is a big source of revenue. In Peloton and its competitors are all home exercise. And also a very little known and fairly modern thing is lyrics have been monetized in the digital era. In fact, the company that invented monetizing lyrics in the digital era is a company from Toronto called Lyric Find. And so when you search for lyrics on the internet and find them, typically that's licensed and paid for. If you have lyrics scrolling in your music app, that's licensed and paid for. Oh, if you want them to scroll in time to the music, that's a higher fee. So all of these things, and of course, the old traditional physical products too, like vinyl and CD, also pays royalties to reproduction royalties to songwriters.
Excellent. And what about print? Is that even significant anymore, or is there still money there?
Not significant, but it still exists. It's kind of like part, sort of like vinyl still exists. But print has really morphed into the whole licensing lyrics in the digital space. And also licensing, sheet music, the notes and chords. That's when you find that on the internet too, that's generally licensed as well.
Excellent. So obviously a lot of different ways for songwriters to make money. So one question that I get a lot is, what exactly do music publishers do? And so that's a great question for you guys.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's various jobs within the publishing industry. So, you could be your role could be a publishing administrator, where you're, physically taking all of the song splits from people, making sure that they're delivered to whoever the administrator is for the publishing company, and making sure that all the PROs worldwide are getting those splits into their system so that the money and the royalties are coming to you as they should be. And then there's, of course, the follow-up. So making sure that all of the international PROs are, talking and making sure that all that stuff is flowing properly. So that's on kind of like the admin side of it. There's the creative publisher, there's the sync department. So when somebody talks about the creative department, it's usually like what you would typically know as an A&R. So those are people that are signing the talent and setting up the sessions to build their catalog moving forward. So really those are the connectors and the ears within the publishing company. And then like the sync person is a really big role too, because they're the ones that are contacting all of the music supervisors on the daily, trying to get them to listen to the music that all of your writers are writing and place those in film and television, as Mike was explaining what the sync royalty side of it is. There's obviously finance departments within publishing. I don't know, Mike, you can add on to all that, I guess.
Yeah, well, that's a great description. I mean, people use publishers for different purposes at different phases of their career. Early in your career, before you're established, you probably are imagining what a publisher will do for you is get you established. So get you either a combination of help you with your craft and your art to get your music to the point where it's ready for the world, and then get it to the world. So as Melissa described, promoting it for sync uses, or getting, publishers get artist record deals. We pitch songs to get them placed. So that's on the creative end, and that's what you're probably looking for when you're very early. Next, people look to publishers for financial support, and that usually comes in the form of an advance against your royalties. So when we sign a writer, especially if somebody is not established, we're taking ultra high risk capital and advancing them money so they can live and support themselves and what have you. So that's an important, very important part of what publishers will do, effectively financing your career or part of your career. And then thirdly, they do administration, as Melissa said. But so if you're a worldwide superstar, you probably don't need much creative help, because you can get in all the rooms to co-write with anybody you want, or you don't need a co-writer, and all you want is somebody to take care of the money. So that's where a publisher that's strong in administration is what you're looking for. But early in your career, you're probably looking for the creative help. You kind of don't care if they're good at administration or what the deal's like.
And what about getting the process of getting a song placed with a well-known artist who might not be a songwriter and is looking for songs to record and to perform?
That's that's the toughest thing in the world right now, I'd say. I think people that are really getting placements or pitched songs are the big writers that are very established already. Typically nowadays, the artist is especially when you're starting out, writing with an artist in the room is definitely the way to go, and building with that artist. Because obviously if you're starting out, getting in with a very well-known artist already is going to be tough. But pitching is very, very good. So I would highly recommend building with new artists as you go along and grow together.
Yeah, and that's growing together is there's a theme there what Melissa's talking about, right? Network with your peers, grow together. So you're almost your own A&R person, in the sense that if get out there in the community, meet as many people as possible, either physically or virtually, and you decide who's really good and whose music's speaking to you, and maybe you can it's almost like birds of a feather flock together, so all the best soccer players in the neighborhood getting together to build a team, so that's a really important thing. And as Melissa said, placing a finished song is the hardest thing to do in the business. Not that it never happens, but when it does happen, it's kind of a miracle, and it's not the predominant way that people get on records. They get on records mostly by co-writing in the room with the artist, and a lot of those, and within that group of people, there's different specialties. There's pure songwriters, people who write lyrics and melody, and they're generally called top liners, because that's an old British term, comes from the top line of the music staff, i.e. the vocal melody line. So people who just write lyrics and melodies, or just one of them, are called top liners. So if you're putting together a session, if you're an A&R person or a manager, or if you're the artist yourself, and you're putting together a writing session, you're generally imagining these different specialties, and you're putting together a team. Each component in that team has their own specialty. So you got a top liner to help with the lyrics and melody. You might have a beat maker who creates the original, basic raw track. Then you might have a producer who's really more of a fulsome music creator that can create the entire track, and that the vocal sits on top of. So there's all these different elements, and so if you can develop a specialty where you're known for one of those, that's a really important thing, because as a higher up the ladder you get, the less anybody has an interest in a jack of all trades or a Jill of all trades. They want to know what's your specialty, what's your superpower, and that tends to be able to get you, in a room, in an important room.
I think that's an important thing to add to, within whatever your pitch is for yourself, all artists everyone always asks for a bio of the artist, right? I think it's really different when you're writing a bio for yourself as a songwriter. Like first question, okay, are you a producer writer or are you a writer, like a top line writer, as Mike was describing? What is, holistically, what is like your main part of it? And then within that, it's like, are you a producer writer who do you make beats like in the box, or are you an multi-instrumentalist? Are you a song starter or finisher? And that doesn't mean that you can't do all of them well-rounded, but like when you are in a room, what do you find yourself doing? Like, what do you find you are the strongest at? And that gives people a better idea of knowing where to put you if they're trying to put a room together.
And a lot of writing credits these days accrue to songwriters who are beat makers, and a lot of them get their music into the hands of a famous artist by posting on the internet. I mean, a couple of great examples of probably one of the best examples ever, a Canadian beat maker making it internationally would be Murda Beats. And he's a guy from Fort Erie, Ontario. His real name's Shane Lindstrom. And Melissa and I and Rodney Murphy, our president and partner, and James Freeman, our CFO, we've all been involved with Murda for a long time. When we used to work at SOCAN, we were big supporters of his at SOCAN. And if you look at his career, he was posting, beats on the internet under the stage name Murda Beats, and he's also very insightful. He's a really smart guy. He would, figure out who he admired and who he wanted to follow, and he would, DM them. And I mean, sooner or later, between just posting things and DMing people and getting to listen to your stuff, you get noticed. But the self-marketing and self-branding skills that a guy like him has are really important, because if he was posting beats under the name Shane Lindstrom, you never would have heard of him, right? So part of the networking is branding and marketing yourself.
Great advice.
Sorry, just to add, also, I know this whole webinar is about like, how do you get a publishing deal? And I know people hate this answer, but I like, my answer is always publishers will come to you. Like, I know that's not a fun answer, but like Mike said, like once the word starts going out there and people start hearing about you and whatnot, that's kind of when things will start to happen, rather than, like blasting everybody in their emails, just trying to get a reaction without doing the work, like to A&R yourself in the beginning.
That's a really great point. Basically, if you build a buzz, right? Build a buzz, and they will come. They being the industry. And it's a funny thing, Melissa used the term A&R earlier, which is an old term, but it's still used all the time. It stands for artist and repertoire. Originally, it was coined for people who worked at a record company who would sign the artist and find them the repertoire, because those are the days when nobody wrote. And it's still used for the talent finders or the people who put the projects together at the label, that kind of thing. So those people are, yes, they're looking at data all the time, but they just have their own networks. And it's a funny thing about people who find talent for a living. There's a lot of people who don't find talent for a living, but they're passionate about it. And almost everybody who's passionate about finding talent has this one genetic flaw, which is that they can't shut up talking about their latest find and the person they're most excited about. And even if it's against your own business interests, people will start hyping somebody to their competitor because they're so excited about it. So if you're making music that is buzzworthy and you're connected with almost anybody, the buzz should spread, and the industry will hear it. I mean, there's always an exception to that, but that's how it works. I mean, Melissa, we have 11 songwriters signed to Kilometre Music Group.
12 now.
12 now. Yeah, that's right. 12. To be announced.
This week.
To be announced. 12. And did any of them come to us anyway other than word of mouth?
No, it was all like organic or through, manager contacts, and when I say organic, I mean like Some could have been through, like through sessions where like I said, one of our writers were already working, one of our signed writers were working with somebody that we met through them, and that ended up becoming a relationship, and then, we ended up signing them as well. So, yeah.
Excellent. So, at some point, assuming, however you found out about them, you're ready to sign a deal with a songwriter. There's going to be a contract. I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about that, just what's in a typical contract, if there is even such a thing, and caution people, I guess, that lawyers are a good idea.
Yeah, never sign a contract.
Lawyers are always a good idea.
Lawyers, but also lawyers who know what they're doing is a good idea. So don't get your parents' real estate lawyer to do your publishing deal. You get a music industry specialist that has been around and knows the marketplace and knows all the tricks and all the pitfalls, etc. Let's start at 30,000 feet. What you're doing is you're dealing with your rights, and rights are really important. Earlier in my career, I ran EMI Music Publishing Canada for about 17 years. And at that time, EMI was the biggest publisher in the world. And I had been out of the country for a few years, and I came back to take that position. And what I've been most interested in my career in publishing is signing and developing talent. So we're finding people, often at a very early stage, and then helping them get from point A to point B. So I was out there looking for talent, and almost everybody I ran into said, "Oh, I've been told never give up your publishing." And it took me a long time to convince people that the following: your rights, whether it's publishing rights, record rights, your name and likeness rights, merch rights, whatever rights you have as an artist or a music creator, that's your currency. And it's right to think of it as very valuable and be protective of it. But it's your currency that you often have to use to spend to get through the journey, your journey in the music business. So the analogy would be, let's say, pioneers. Let's say, imagine, 120, 200 years ago, whatever, people coming over from Europe on a boat to North America, and they're coming to the promised land, and they've liquidated all their possessions and turned it into gold, and they buy their ticket for the ship, or they get on the shore, and they buy their covered wagon and their horses, and they bought barrel of water, a barrel of meat, and a gun, and some ammunition. And your job is to get across the continent to where the gold is. Well, as you're on that journey, you've got to spend and use your resources. You got to use the water and the meat and the horses and the guns and all that. But you got to be really smart about it. And because the idea is when you arrive at the other end where the gold supposedly is, you got to have some resources left, right? So it's no different. And so if you're signing a publishing deal before you're established, you are presumably, as I said earlier, getting into bed with a publisher you think is going to help your career happen. And so you have to make sure that the contract reflects what you're promising. And the number one advice I give to people about contracts is, you have to look at it from two different ways. First of all, look at it from the point of view, and this is a natural point of view to look at it from, is what happens if everything goes right? What happens if these people do what they say they're going to do? I do what I say I'm going to do. I deliver, they deliver. I turn out to be a spectacularly successful career. What am I getting? And what am I not getting? What am I giving up to get that? And then look at it from the other point of view. What if it all goes wrong, which most of the time it does? Unfortunately, what happens? How long am I locked into this for? Can I get out of it? If I can get out of it, do I leave with my songs or not? So you have to look at it from both perspectives. So that it's not a surprise when and if it doesn't work out. And it's not a surprise when it does work out, and you're not shocked to know that you're making millions and millions of dollars a year, but half of it's going to this company, right? So the other, and so all your rights, protect them. You understand that you're leveraging this right to get to from point A to point B.
Excellent. And I get asked a lot, where do you find a publisher? Who are they? Who are the good ones? Who are not? How can people research that to figure out either, I guess, if they're going to approach a publisher, who should it be? Or if they're in discussions with the publisher, how can they do some due diligence, I guess, on their reputation.
Well, the bad ones are in jail. Just kidding. Well, this is actually a great question, and my answer would be tucked into a broader answer to a broader question or a broader issue, and that is research. As I said earlier, Google's your friend. In fact, that in my experience, there's almost nothing in the world you can't find through Google. And so, and I'm the kind of person, just the way my brain works, is I got to research things to death. When I wanted to get into the music business, I would do things like I would go to conferences like, Departure, North by Northeast, whatever the equivalents were back in the day. And I would want to meet people in the music industry. So what I would do beforehand was I went to the library and I got the industry magazines, which don't exist anymore on paper, but there was people. If you've never heard of Billboard magazine, you're not doing enough research into the music business. But something like Billboard or whatever, and I would take those. I would look for pictures of a gold record presentation. So there'd be a couple of executives from the record company or the publishing company and the artist getting the award presented to them, and I would cut these pictures out and made a scrapbook of them. Oh yeah, I was obsessed. And so I would come to these conferences with the scrapbook, and I would have all the faces and names and titles and companies memorized. So I would spot these people all over the room, and I knew exactly who they were.
It's so much easier now.
Yeah.
Now it's all on, you look at signing photos on Instagram and you can everyone's tagged, and then you start following those people, be a bit of a sleuth, and then you can, but in terms of knowing if they're good or not, but you can see what their success is with some of the writers that they've signed, right?
It's easy to figure out who the companies are.
Yeah.
So figure out who the companies are. Don't expect the world's going to tell you. Figure out who the companies are. Figure out who the people are. And one of the time-honored ways to figure out what company you'd like to be with, at least as an introductory thought process, is who's got a roster you admire, because maybe they have the same taste as you, and maybe you fit there, right? And that's a really good way to do it. Big companies, I mean, there's pros and cons between big and little companies. Big companies have way more juice in the marketplace than little companies, but you can tend to get lost in a big roster. Mm-hmm. And if you're with a little company, they may not have many resources, but they may, you may have a tremendous one-on-one relationship with the people who matter. Mm-hmm. And I think at the end of the day, it's mostly about relationships. Yeah. You want to be working with people who you like and respect, and get you get them, and you bond and vibe with them. And the only way to find them is to build relationships and network. Mm-hmm. And
also, I think for some of the bigger, the big name publishers, like the Warner Chappells and whatnot of the world, they may, some of the big creatives, like the VP of creatives and stuff like that, they're going to have an A&R assistant with them as well. Back to the theme of coming up with people, those are the people that you want to really dig in with, because they're the ones that are a lot of the time bringing stuff to the VP of creative to really push it. And they're very they're hungry, they're out at shows, they're they're big time A&Ring a lot of things because they're on the come up as well. And because I know a lot of people will automatically go to the CEO of a company or whatever, right? And it's hard to get meetings and all of that kind of stuff with people. So, yeah. And those people that are starting out as the assistant are going to move around the industry, move up in the industry if they're good, and they will be the ones that you're going to grow with and connect with for your career, right? Same with being on the industry side. I've noticed that has happened for myself. I have a lot of friends that are spread out in the industry now because of that.
It's great points. One of the artists signed to us has a record deal and a management deal because of what Melissa just described. Is that so people kind of lower down the pole in the company discovered her music and convinced their companies to sign them.
What if somebody decides they've done their research and they find your company's perfect? What's the best process to get their music in front of you without driving you crazy?
Do you mean from just a cold reach out?
Yeah. How can they make contact, and how can they get you something to listen to, or what's the best way?
It's a good question. Like, I think a lot of the cold emails that come in, I think I actually something that I heard at or from music supervisors was even like, just when you email, don't drop music immediately, being like, hey, let's work, check my music, or whatever. It's like, what? Like, who are you? What do you want from me? Why am I gonna spend the time listening to your link right now? Like, but talking to music supervisors and stuff like that about doing cold reach outs, the advice is to, in a very, very short way, because people don't have time to read a whole essay, like explain quickly who you are, what you want, like what you're looking for, and would it be all right if I shared some music with you? Like, asking before you actually send stuff right away goes a long way. And never attach MP3s into an email, because it just bogs everyone's email, and like always streaming links.
Yeah, you want links like, sound, like if it's not really, if it's a release, Spotify link or whatever. If it's not released, SoundCloud, or what's that one that everybody's using now?
To like send music?
Yeah.
Untitled.
Untitled. Yeah, there's a platform called Untitled, which is really stupid name because try and Google it, it's hard. But anyway, called Untitled, and it's a really cool, clean, graphically pleasing way to present your music to people. And so what they get is a link, and they, that takes them to this really clean page where they can hear the tracks. There's zero benefit to loading it up with a lot of tracks. People, when they see a lot of songs, they probably just get intimidated. They don't even listen to any of it. 1, 2, 3 songs at the most, if you try to open up a relationship. In fact, here's what one of my peers, guy I went to college with, and he's a successful songwriter. Then he ended up being head of A&R for Sony Records for many, many years, and Sony Publishing. And now he's a professor at Music Industry Arts program at Fanshawe College in London. His name's Mike Roth. And Mike when you meet him, he's an incredible example of an adage that I used to have a sign on my desk in my office that said, "Success in the music business depends on spreading enthusiasm for your music." And Mike is a phenomenal enthusiasm spreader. And when he's excited about a piece of music, as far as he's concerned, it's the greatest song he's ever heard. And when he's telling you that, how can you resist not listening to it? But there can't be 2 greatest songs he's ever heard. You know what I mean? Like, so he doesn't say, here's 3 songs. He's saying, this is the greatest song I've ever heard. You've got to listen to it. And so there's a real power to having one piece of music in front of a face you're trying to get attention of. And if that doesn't work, then you have the next one. Oh, this one's the greatest one ever.
I've outdone myself.
Yeah.
And what about showcasing or going to songwriting events? There's a whole slew of those in Nashville. Is there any value for real for a songwriter? Are they likely to connect with a publisher at those events?
Oh, you mean like a
songwriting cafes and at things like Departure, where you can showcase North by Northeast? Is it likely that's going to get you anywhere with a publisher being at those events?
I think networking is great. I don't think it's like I will say, like, some people try and go to Nashville before they're ready. Like, I think really you can start co-writing and like, don't go to Nashville if you've never co-written a song before. Like, what's the point, right? Like, don't just try and start there, because that's what everybody is there for, right? I feel like you can, wherever you live in the world, like, you can start there, get a catalog together, and then start the process of going to like Music City, to do things. But in terms of like, if there's networking events or going to like songwriter circles and things like that, to check them out, I mean, it's great to always do that for sure, and just start meeting people.
None of them are likely to make anything happen. Some of it, any of it might, and so it's a combination of knocking on all the doors you can and the cumulative effect of that, or then as you keep doing it, you start to get smart about it, or lucky, or what have you.
Excellent. So what about, we talked before about getting feedback on your songs. What, any tips there, I guess, especially if you're have a publishing deal and you're starting to. A lot of times, musicians, songwriters don't take advice very well, and I'm just wondering the importance of that to get feedback from people that know what they're doing on your art. Even your songs are personal, you kind of have to be bulletproof in a way, and that's true of anything. Actors, they have to go through a lot of criticism. Any tips on that?
Well, it's a great question. And one of the things that I think is really helpful in a career for yourself and also just in the business in general, and when you're running a company like we do, is to try and develop a culture where when you're criticizing the thing, you're not criticizing the person who made the thing. And therefore, if you're receiving the criticism, you don't feel like you're being told you suck. Your song sucks, or this part of the song sucks. And that's a really hard thing for humans to do, but it's one of the most important elements in successful things in the I think in the creative business in general. And I've always tried to operate that way. It really helped focus me on that, and both in the concept in my head and being able to express it. Years ago, I read a book called Creativity Inc. And it's written by a guy named Ed Catmull, who was co-founder of Pixar. He's a computer scientist, and his dream was to drag the computer science into the world of creating animation, of course. And so Pixar is, in my opinion, is the most successful entertainment company of the last 40, 50 years. It's probably lost its way a little bit since it got sold to Disney, but in its heyday, I had an unbelievable track record of blockbuster after blockbuster after blockbuster with very few stumbles. And one of the keys that he talks about in that book is they successfully created a culture in their company where it was that people were brutally honest about the thing they were working on, in their case, a movie. And they learned to not take it personally. And that's a very hard thing to do, but if you can develop that skill, it's incredibly important.
I think sometimes people get so focused on one song, one album, one single, and they don't realize that there'll be more. I mean, if a song came out of you, there's more to come. And that kind of leads into the last point here, which is persistence and patience. If you could talk about that, just how important that is in any career. It doesn't matter what it is, but as a songwriter, how important that is to not give up, and that it might take a long time.
Well, I think with anything, I mean, choosing to be a songwriter as your career is like really tough. Like choosing to be an artist is very even tougher, probably. I don't know if it's even tougher, but they're both very tough. So it has to be something that you like absolutely are sure you want to be doing, and otherwise, I mean, you can write songs for fun, like everybody can do that for sure. But if you want that to be your career, like I think you have to be patient and really, really hone in on your skill. Just like anything, when you're studying to be a doctor or any of those things, you really have to put the time and effort into it, and take it seriously if that's going to be your career. Being patient, I mean, yeah, you're not going to write one song. Let's say you're an artist and a songwriter. I mean, dropping one song and expecting it to blow up is very unlikely that it's going to happen, even if it is a really, really great song. I mean, it's tough, right? So I think just understanding that and then keeping things moving if this is what you really want to do.
Yeah, I mean, to get anywhere in the music business, not only does a creator, but even just in the business, it's kind of the same syndrome, but it's worse if you're the creator. And that is, you're going to get 1,000 doors slammed in your face, and 1,000 people telling you that your music's not very good, and it may not be very good.
But it might be, because that might be one person's opinion, and who says their opinion is.
That's right. So you have to develop this sense that nobody's going to tell me that I can't make it. And most of those people who keep going don't make it, but some of them do. And that's a remarkable magic, joyful thing when you see somebody who's been working at the craft for a long time and working really hard and doing all the right things, and all of a sudden it all works out. The way I like to describe it is it's usually a hit. So this is a hit-driven business. This is my opinion, that it always has been and always will be. And when you're around a hit, it's one of the most exciting, exhilarating things you can possibly imagine. And the way I like to describe it is, everybody's pushing against this brick wall, trying to get through the wall. You're pushing. It feels like you've been pushing for years. In some cases, you have been. Then all of a sudden, without warning, the wall gives away, and you fall in on the bricks, and you're lying there on a pile of bricks, all the dust and everything, and you look behind you, there's a herd of elephants coming after you. So you got to get up and run. That's what it's like to be around a hit. And it makes everything happen. Like all the things you've been pushing for and pushing against, all the walls, everything, all that melts away, and now the world wants you, and they come to you.
Yeah, it's a strange thing sometimes. A few questions that I've got in the Q&A box here. Somebody said recently wrote lyrics to a very popular oldie tune that has traditionally been played without lyrics. How can I know if I can perform it, and where is the question?
If the song is a public domain song, or PD, you can do anything you want with it. It's hard to tell, like if it's really, really old, like if it's an old English folk song or something, then you're probably pretty safe. Or if a classic piece of Mozart, for your safe for sure. If you're not sure, there are some websites I think you can go to find public domain. Whether something's public domain, it's probably not definitive. Public domain means it's no longer under copyright, so nobody owns it. One way you could sort of guess would be look at the copyright laws. So in most countries in the Western world, copyright lasts for the life of the writer, or the last remaining writer on it, if there's more than one, plus 70 years. So if you do some research, you find that it's written by Jane Smith, and she died 80 years ago, then you can be pretty certain it's in public domain.
Excellent. I have one question here. Is it a good idea to set some kind of timeline for success? For example, give yourself 5 years.
That would stress me out. I feel like if you're like, oh, I'll be okay with quitting after 5 years, then maybe you don't want it so much,
Look, it's up to it's up to the individual. There's lots of people, lots of stories you hear that, well, my parents gave me like a year to go out and find it my way, or that I had to go back to school and it worked, or and there's other people who say it took me 10 years to break through. So if you would have given yourself 5 years, you wouldn't have you never would have broken through. I found in my life, the universe, once I can get tuned into the universe, and it's usually my wife that tunes me into the universe, the universe tells you. Like, for instance, I started as a recording engineer and then a record producer. And I was actually in the search. I was on a quest to find the secret of making a magic record. Initially, I thought it was what you did with technology. That's why I became an engineer. Then I realized that wasn't the secret. That was important, but the secret was somewhere earlier in the food chain. And then that's producing. That's it. Helping people, helping guide a performance, or pick a song, or help guide an arrangement. And once I started producing, I finally realized, no, it's not how they're singing. It's what they're singing is the secret. The song, the melody, and lyrics. That's the secret to making hit records and magic music. And but once I even realized that, I didn't know I should be a publisher. It was, the universe told me. The publishing industry came after me and said, you should be a publisher. So I never set out to be one, but so you can be sensitive to that.
Same. Yeah, you just follow where things take you.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, life doesn't always go where you expect it to go. Another question here. Wants to become a professional songwriter. Would marketing myself as a solo performing artist help me get attention as a songwriter, even if I don't necessarily want to become a touring artist performer? That's an answer to that one. So in other words, if you're an artist, is that going to help you gain traction as a songwriter?
I feel like it's funny. I was talking to somebody about writers in Canada, like as opposed to producer writers. Like it's hard to find amazing writers within our city specifically. It's more like Toronto specifically is really known for producers, like writer producers. And I was talking to somebody about this recently, and we were like, why is that? Like I can name a handful of people that are like the go-to ones, that people are always asking for here. And whereas LA and Nashville is like the opposite, right? Like that's like there's tons out there. And I feel like a lot of people have done that, they want to be a writer, but they've chosen to do the artist thing in order to be like the outlet to get the songs out. And I feel like sometimes that isn't the best thing. If you really don't want to be the artist, and maybe you're like not a great singer or a great artist, maybe it might be the wrong thing to do. So I would suggest trying to approach an artist to work with as the writer, because it could backfire a little bit on you.
That's really great analysis. I mean, first of all, you can't half-ass do any of it.
Yeah.
Right. So yes, in theory, if you can make some noise as an artist, that can help you as a writer, and vice versa. But if you just take a half-ass stab at it, you're not really believing in yourself or your ability as an artist. As Melissa said, I wouldn't bother, because you dilute your focus.
Nothing wrong with doing like songwriter circles and things like that as like to perform your songs. That's, it's understood that whoever is up there is the writer of the song and whatnot. But I feel like it comes along. I don't know how much traction you would get if you're not really putting your all into like marketing yourself as an artist, like online and all of that stuff, if that's not really like what you're trying to do with the music. I
mean, we have people on our roster who we consider to be on dual tracks, but both of us believe in their ability as an artist, I mean, and they're highly committed to being an artist, but they're also realistic that if that doesn't work for them, then the other path might work. And often they're in writing sessions with other people, writing for other people, just to sort of try and make that track, see if that track works first. But there's no question that the songwriting world is disproportionately popular with people who are failed artists, for sure.
Excellent. So we're going to wrap things up today. I especially want to thank Mike and Melissa for taking the time today, and the benefit of all their experience. And obviously you have to look at your own situation, your own career. But like Nike says, just do it. I always like that motto. You gotta continue, take heart. It is possible to be successful. It's difficult, but all the best to all of you in your careers. And again, thanks again to Mike and Melissa. Take care.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.